Welcome to Accounting High.
Overworked, underpaid, the image problem. They're long-term problems that, there's a whole task force. I think the AICPA has a 12-point plan, to fix all this stuff. But I think it keeps coming up and up because I think they keep falling short, in my opinion, like on the progress that's being made. Like something as simple as, hey, do we need the 150? Like I got my extra credit hours doing intro to film class at a community college. That's not helping me at all. It's a money grab. It's a higher education money grab. The youngest workers now entering the workforce have kind of forced the hand by basically voting with their feet and not taking the CPA exam, not studying accounting. It's forced the hand of everyone to say, hey, maybe we need to change some stuff. I think a lot of what happens is people burn out and then they go to jump to industry or do something else and they take the first job they can get because they just got to get out of there. Maybe Uprising is a little dramatic, but I like a good drama. So I feel like there is a little bit of an uprising now.
Welcome back, Accounting High. Now it's time for social studies. We'll teach you new creative ways to market old product. If you watch how they post, you'll see it's all authentic and genuine. Grow a following and don't get held back by perfection. Be intentional online, create content. Now that's hot. Strategy is key with social media and pods. Start slow, pick a platform, stick to it and go post. Make a plan to engage with client watering holes. Create a focused brand, be a lead online. It's a digital world with the best ROI. Now create your own ideal client persona. Let's go. Keyword Accounting High and get ready to blow. It's time for social studies, accounting content hub, LinkedIn marketing or X. So come join our social club. Is it Twitter? Is it X? Shit, now I can't keep up. So comment, follow, love if you into social studies.
Introducing the star of our show,
Scotty and Eminem. Mike Manalac.
We're gonna have a problem here.
Class is in session. What's up, homie?
What's going on, man? Glad to be a part of the show. Love what you're doing.
I'm so happy to have you on, dude. I love the stuff you're doing on LinkedIn. I don't give a flux. I know that's not exactly how you put it, but once I first started seeing that, I would see the flux capacitor too, like the Back to the Future image, and it's all about accounting and it's all fun stuff. If you haven't seen Mike Manalac on LinkedIn yet, please do yourself a favor. Go check his stuff out. It's kind of like a Rick and Morty vibe too when you do the cartoons and like a cool gritty stuff. It reminds me of Greg Kite too. What Greg Kite, his disclosure drafts, and you do all kinds of fun stuff. But what I'm seeing from you, Mike, is a lot of hope for the accounting profession at large. We're at the guidance counselor. We're at the guide today in the guidance counselor's office, and we're going to talk about the profession at large. We're going to talk about some bigger things. You like all those big topics. That's what you talk about. You're here today, and our students, you're in for a treat. You get to hear from the Eminem or Mike Manalac. We got a few Eminems on this show back in the day, or all throughout. We haven't really had Marshall on yet, but we've had a lot of Eminems. So you guys are in for a treat today. Mike, why don't you tell our students a little bit about where you come from, who you are, how'd you get into accounting, how'd you score this job at Google? You're working with Google's accounting department. That's amazing. So yeah, give us a little bit of intro. Who's Mike?
Super excited to be here. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I might get into it later, but spent some time over on the West Coast in San Francisco, and now I'm in Chicago. So kind of popped around the East Coast, West Coast, Midwest. Yeah, I'm a CPA. I'm an accounting manager on Google's finance team. So lead a team of 5, distributed team across the country. A couple of us in Chicago here, some in Austin, some in LA. But yeah, I came up the way probably a lot of your listeners did in the public accounting ranks. First at a top 20 firm before jumping over to Big Four, and was in the audit side of the house, working on financial services clients. Made the shift over to industry. That's when I kind of wanted to go, as high up on the Fortune 500 list as I could get, and landed a financial reporting role with Walmart's e-commerce division. So I did Walmart.com, and then that kind of led me to Google. That I guess is a little over 6 years ago.
6 years. So I didn't really hear why accounting though. Why the CPA?
Yeah, I guess going back into college, I was really into like science and like, a bunch of other stuff that I found maybe more, I was more curious about. And I remember my dad saying like, how many scientists do you know, Mike? And I was like, I guess none. He was looking
Question. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, well, I like history too. And he was like, well, how many historians do you know? I was like, well, I guess none. And it was such good advice because there's a lot of degrees out there now where you graduate and it's not really worth the piece of paper that it's printed on. So I'm glad that like my dad asked me some of those tough questions, and accounting was one where I could see what the path would look like. I like numbers, always kind of have. And actually felt like it clicked more too. Like I didn't have as much trouble as some of my classmates. And I was like, well, maybe that's something that I could get into, right? If it clicks for me, maybe I can make a career out of that. And one thing turns into another, and that was, 15 plus years ago. But yeah, I haven't looked back so far.
Was all the math classes always easier for you? Did you always find that easier in school?
I actually think it's even funnier. Not easier. I was always into it, and I was good at it. But I was always the effort guy, Scotty. It never was like the guy who didn't have to study. I always had to try. What I liked about accounting, it probably goes against popular belief, but you don't have to take that many math classes. Like, I think I had like one calc class, but like you go into an engineering degree, man, and you got some like calc 1, 2, 3 and all these other high level classes. So just enough math to, I think, get you through in the accounting space. And I found that appealing too, I guess.
Yeah. And then I guess, how about early accounting classes? Did you find those fairly interesting? I mean, how much math is involved in those classes?
It's almost like, the debits and credits and balancing out and assets plus liability equal owner's equity. It's not like crazy math, but you kind of got to know what is going to increase something, what's going to decrease something else on the balance sheet, and minus out expenses to get to your like true P&L and like all those things.
But it wasn't that painful for you. All of that stuff didn't seem that painful.
No.
Because a lot of people, that's painful. Just
true.
Accounting in general is painful for them to talk about or even go near. That's probably why we have such a problem that we're facing in the profession is people are very averse to accounting or what that entails. So a lot of them might not know what that entails. So we're seen as those that are venturing into something that is less desirable to begin with for a certain subset of the population. And then you have those of us that are energized by it. And a lot of people that I talk to on the show are very energized by accounting. They see it as a puzzle. And to them, they wouldn't have it any other way, that it's fun. Like doing these kind of things is fun to them and engaging. Are you in that camp? Or was this just like, this is going to be a means to an end kind of thing? How about, what were your thoughts?
Valentine's Day's coming up. I'm not writing my Valentine to the accounting profession. But I'd say, I like accounting. I may not full blown head over heels love it, but I've always liked it. The puzzles, the challenge, the numbers aspect of it, like all that stuff clicked. I think the fact that it was like a career path that was also seemed pretty appealing and defined definitely like appealed to me too. But a lot of it, I feel like, you can't expect accounting. You only get out of it what you put in too, right? So I feel like I can
That's
make
like anything in life, right?
Yeah, and I feel like I can even make it more interesting and more fun by how I'm looking at it and how I merge like the things I'm interested in with the things that I do for work, and trying to merge those together to be a little more fulfilling, because there's a story behind all these numbers. But if you're just looking at a spreadsheet, you're not gonna love it. You kind of have to find the fun in it, and it's there.
Find the fun in finance.
Yeah.
Find the fun in finance. So, and you're finding that now, and I don't want to skip too far ahead to the end because you were in the middle of telling your story there. As you evolved, you said you were talking about Deloitte, and so continue on your path of the journey that you ended up on to get to where you're at now. Yeah.
Yeah, so Deloitte was one that I got an interview but not an offer. Then I did top 20 firm, Cohn Resnick. Maybe they're closer to top 10 now. But from there, went over to PwC. That was out of the San Francisco office. That was sort of my ticket to, hey, I wanted to work for a big tech company, so get me as close as I can, get me on the doorstep, and let me knock on some doors and see if I can get somebody to open the pearly gates of like what I saw as the Silicon Valley like dream industry job. And didn't quite play out exactly like that.
In a way, it kind of did for you in the end. I mean, what's the dream of Silicon Valley? What do you think of?
That's true. I mean, it didn't happen as easy as I thought. Not that I thought it would be easy, but it was much harder. But you're right. Like eventually I got in, and part of that was the path through Walmart. Their .com side of the business is located just south of San Francisco too, but they have a lot of the same perks that you might think of a big tech company. They got shuttles that'll pick you up at home like you're in high school and take you to work, and the lunch cafeterias at the gyms. It's wild to stand at the corner as an adult.
Don't miss the bus, though. Don't miss the shuttle.
Oh, don't miss the bus. And then you got to stand around and wait for another 45 minutes to get the next one. But no, so it did work out. I already knew. I mean, I shouldn't say I expected it to be easy, because those jobs are super competitive. But, you know, one step at a time. I think the PwC route was really just to get the Big Four. You get tired of seeing Big Four preferred on every freaking job application you see or description. So knock that out of the way. And then there was the other thing that was kind of haunting me was you don't have industry experience or Fortune 500 experience, no big ERPs, and never done a reconciliation or booked an entry, and what do you know about big data? And I couldn't say any of those things until getting into Walmart, and that was maybe not what people would think of as like a dream opportunity right out of the box, but it's hard to match the scale of a company like Walmart. And you know, I was booking things in the billions, and it was a fun time. It's still
just not as sexy as saying something like Google or Amazon. I don't know. Well, actually, Amazon and Walmart, you know, they're in a way some kind of parallels. A lot of parallels there.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just not as sexy to say I worked for Walmart.com as it is to say I work at Google, I guess.
Yeah.
Although, in a way, that was your springboard. How did you end up at Walmart.com? Like, what was, because that was your shift from public to private. Is that right?
Yep. Yes. Yep. So this was when, speaking of Amazon, like, still even today, but they were gobbling up most of the market share. And Walmart, for the most part, hey, we're the brick and mortar side, right? They weren't really investing in the .com side. So this is going back to 2017, but I think they caught wind of it saying, look, we got to do something because we're being leapfrogged by Amazon over here. And so they poured, I think it was $2 billion investment in the .com side of the house. And that involved opening up a ton of roles, including accounting roles. And it was unique too, because Walmart had so many different revenue streams. Like, you can go into Walmart, you can buy anything, right? Pharmacy, you can get a cup of coffee, you can get a ladder, you can get a bed, you can get photos printed and prescription glasses. They had all these revenue streams, but they didn't have the subscription-based model like an Amazon Prime equivalent. So one of my projects was called Shipping Pass. It was the first iteration of Walmart's subscription-based model to compete with Prime. So they were hiring a ton, trying to get people in there. And so some of this can be a little bit of luck, but you know, they were looking for people with strong public background like myself. I maybe make it sound like I walked in there, but that was after I already like failed interviews with like Salesforce and Uber and Pandora Radio and like a bunch of others. But you know, with all those failures, you start to figure it out a little bit. And yeah, Walmart was a great and fun opportunity too, because they were moving fast to try to keep up with Amazon. And it was like we had just bought a tech company, merged with a tech company called Jet.com out of Hoboken, and they took the reins on the e-commerce business. So, you know, it felt like I was working for a tech startup unicorn with like the finances of a Fortune 1 company. So it was what a really cool mashup that was. And so I got to see a lot of cool stuff.
I guess I have to correct you. I don't think any of those were failures. You were just different paths that closed off for you. So, you know, they didn't even end up going down those paths. They were just different doors that maybe necessarily literally didn't open for you, but then the one that did, that turns into the path. And then that's you going on your journey. So Walmart.com, eventually, what happened to that? How did that lead to Google?
So obviously doing the e-commerce stuff was inching closer, like the online property, so inching closer to tech. I was also in Silicon Valley. The tip of San Bruno is kind of like the northern tip of Silicon Valley. So I was sort of in that circle a little bit. And from Walmart, I was getting interest in, Google was my number one, but really I was looking at all the big companies, the Netflixes, the Amazons, all of those. So from Walmart, I got traction with Amazon because they're playing in the same space. So I started interviewing with Amazon, and then from that sort of broadened out to other tech companies like Facebook and Tesla and what was once called Twitter, and mentioned a couple others there. And then even outside of tech.
You didn't go down that path. You might have gotten laid off already if you were at the Twitter.
I know. I'm curious. I don't know how many of the finance teams were impacted, but I'm sure nobody was spared in the Elon wrath there.
Oh, well, it sounds like you were on this path. Your journey was leading to your dream job, which sounds like of all those, you couldn't have gone wrong. All the ones that you were rattling off, if you had interviews with all of those, then potentially you're just using that Walmart.com as a springboard to land your tech dream job. And you did it.
Yes.
Through a lot of grit, through a lot of applications. You applied to a ton of different places, a lot of effort. You landed it. Then what? You got your job at Google. Was that always sort of the top of everybody you named? Was that sort of the one that was like, if I could get a job at Google, that would be, I made it. Was that it?
I mean, it was. Somebody had asked me what was my dream job. And a lot of people don't have an answer to that when you ask, right? And somebody had asked me that in Baltimore, and I said Google as like a knee-jerk reaction. And it really was, because it was kind of at least I saw it this way, as like the epitome of Silicon Valley, and like the free lunches and the massages and the slides going up and down the floors. Like, it was a Vince Vaughn movie, right? But like, it wasn't that far from reality. And coming from public accounting, man, I'm doing like 80-hour weeks, like eating lunch at my desk, like dinner at my desk. Like, that seemed like as best of a dream job that I could land. So that's kind of where it sat in my mind. You're not wrong.
Well, because it leads me to your platform now. It's all about helping people land their dream job and helping them get there. No flux given is what, that's your book, right?
Yeah.
So, but I want to kind of ease us into that part of it. Was it everything you dreamed when you got the job, or what? Like, give me the reality of this now. You ended up doing all of these things, and you said all the cool things, but was it that cool after?
I'd say it was and it wasn't. And I guess what I mean by that is, you don't just get paid to like hang out and get free lunches and ride bikes around campus. Like, you're working really hard. I know you go by OKR, but there's like OKRs left and right everywhere you go. Like, what is your success metric?
Yeah.
So it wasn't, hey, come in and do these journal entries like maybe a typical job would be. It was very much like 20% might have been that. The 80% is, hey, what are you doing to transform this process? What are you automating? What are you doing that's outside of the box? And so it was a little more difficult, I guess, very different than anything I had seen before. And that made it hard because I didn't know anything about digital ads, which is kind of the bread and butter of Google. And as a user of Google search, and I'll admit I skip a nice YouTube ad here every now and then too. But like, I never thought about the behind the scenes, the revenue side, the transactions and all of those things. So it was pretty foreign business model, like especially in public accounting. I was doing like financial services and like this company has a bunch of loans and assets and, stuff that also wasn't necessarily all that appealing to me, but it couldn't have been more different to go with the tech company that's making money serving an ad that people click past, So it was an adjustment there, but all of those bells and whistles that I wanted were there. It was just hard. I was usually working and not having time to take advantage of them as much. So over time, I started to force myself to go to the different talks that they would have and ride the bikes around from building to building and go to the food trucks. Like, I would force myself, and I always enjoyed it. But it's easy to get wrapped up in your work and you end up, just just like any other job. So
I could imagine you have to
Yeah.
force yourself to do the fun, and in a way, because you're ambitious and because you want to succeed and do well at your job, forcing yourself to stay there and stick with the work too is what we've been trained to do. That's how we've always been trained. We're hard workers. You said you're a hard worker in school, so you always had to, put a little bit of extra effort into it. You may feel like that working at a company like this, that you want to shine and you want to excel, then you may have to spend more time. But Google is one that I always been known for being imaginative and giving their employees extra time and space to just think outside the box and to do those things. And it sounds like that was part of your job criteria anyway. It wasn't a bland, boring role, so to speak, on paper either. But you're in a world of people that are all doing fun things, I'm sure, in a way, or making their job fun because they're innovative, because they're at Google in the first place. So what got them there is what's going to help them succeed in that environment in the first place. So they're always trying to reinvent. So I could see that as being fascinating. Were you working on campus or were you remote? Where'd your job location look like? Is that in Chicago now?
The world has changed in the last 6 years, as everybody knows, but this is pre-pandemic. So I was commuting. They have the Google bus, so you're in some leather reclined seats, but still commuting from San Francisco, 2 hours each way, man. 4-hour round trip, 5 days a week. If you were to say like, hey, are you gonna do 20-hour plus commute time a week? To me now, I would say, what is that? Like, you'd have to be an idiot to do that. But at the time, I could have lived a little closer to Mountain View. I was based out of the Sunnyvale office right next to Mountain View, which is the mothership, the HQ. But I didn't really want to live there. Like, I'm not going to travel across the country to go live in kind of like a suburb. I wanted to be in San Francisco, super fun city.
Right.
So I stuck with the long commute. And fortunately, like, there's Wi-Fi, like, it's a comfortable bus situation. But a commute is a commute. I know you're probably only walking to your kitchen and back.
That's all I'm doing. And honestly, I miss I'm at the point now where I want to commute. I want to be able to listen to music more, do more stuff in the car. I miss that extra buffer. My walk is my commute now. Yeah, I actually have to just walk circles in my neighborhood for a few hours. That's my commute. So I'm still commuting the same amount of time you are, 20 hours a week. I'm just outside walking. Yeah. I just got my headphones on. It sounds pretty cush though. If they're giving you a bus, they're picking you up and everything. I can only imagine. Would you have to, if you missed that bus, there wouldn't be another shuttle coming 45 minutes later. You're getting an Uber or something.
Oh man, I did the Uber thing once, and that's a long drive. It's not cheap either, but they actually had buses pretty frequently. So like every maybe 40. Not even 45 minutes. Like sometimes I'd miss my bus at 4 and there'd be one at 4:15 but then there was a little stigma too. Like I had a long commute, but do I get out of my desk at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, or am I worried about judgmental eyes? A lot of that was in my own head. But to your point, like I didn't want people to think of me as a slacker, and we all came from public accounting where you don't get up and go home until the most senior person in the room. All this toxic stuff, that I don't know how much of this you can relate to, but I'm sure a lot of your listeners can. All those things are in the back of your head, but it was very helpful because some nights we're working late and you could catch a bus at 9:45 at night to go back home. So thankfully it didn't happen too much, but the options were there.
So your life is a little different now post-COVID as with everybody. We don't have to worry about that commuting anymore. You're relocated to Chicago. And what got you started with this extracurricular activities? Is this part of the Google initiative where you want to rethink yourself, or was this, how'd you get started doing all this extra stuff?
No, nothing to do with Google. I think a lot of it was reading all the headlines that were bashing the accounting industry. It was all doom and gloom. I'd say it still probably is, but it wasn't really
if it's
the
in
reality.
The news, it's doom and gloom. Yeah,
it's doom
if
and gloom,
in the news and it's accounting.
Yeah, and I kind of got tired of seeing that and wanted to maybe offer a different perspective in case others might find that valuable. And then the whole talent shortage and people not signing up to study accounting. We've been talking about it to some degree for a while, but it's really heated up in the last year, I think, with Gen Z turning into working age. And so part of me just wanted to offer a different perspective. And then occasionally I'd get people saying like, hey, I got an interview for this, like any tips? And I'd have like tons of stuff to say and tons of things to share. And a few times like it happened enough that I said, maybe I'll jot some stuff down. And that turned into, going through a debrief of all of my interviews with the lessons I learned after each. And then I figured, well, maybe I'll put it out there. Maybe it'll help somebody, because there's not a lot of resources out there for anyone looking to leave public accounting and go into industry. Actually, probably zero resources. So I thought, well, maybe I have what I consider to be a pretty unique perspective. And, it was hard for me to do it, but I did it. And if others can maybe learn from my mistakes, have at it. Like I wish I had those resources. I didn't, but, maybe somebody else can benefit from them. So, it all started with really just thinking that there might be a point of view that's not being heard, and maybe I'll do that. And actually just started having fun with it. That's why I started drawing like the pictures and stuff. That ended up being like more of the fun side of it. And to be honest, Scotty, like I'm telling my own story and like the things that I've learned. So it's not like that big of a chore for me. So if I can help a few people and maybe inspire, entertain, or inform, educate, something like that. And to me, I feel good knowing that maybe a few other people get a kick out of it or maybe learn something. And that's enough for me to kind of, put some of my perspective out there in the world.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find that without the 20 hours of commuting, is that the time you're spending doing this now? Or have you created new space and time to do this and made a priority?
So it actually kind of worked in a little bit of a different way, where I was spending a lot of time just doom scrolling, right? I know a lot of people, like, you get off work and you doom scroll. Yeah. And I kind of felt like I'm not contributing anything. I'm just like sucking it all up. So I said, well, maybe I'll take an hour out of my day to do something more productive. And that was going to be, I did this like drawing challenge, draw a picture every day and look how much you improve, right? But I didn't know what to draw. So I started to think, well, if I have something to write about, then I can think of some metaphor or some visual, and then I'll know what to draw, and then I can whip something up. And I'm not trying to do the Mona Lisa or anything, so that the stuff doesn't take me a ton of time, but it kind of came out of a drawing exercise paired with the accounting profession, which is something I know about. That's how it started, and I had no intent to really like keep doing it, but I've had fun doing it, and no reason for me to stop. And I got some cool opportunities, talk to people like you every now and then, and things like that. So only good things have came from sort of doing that.
That's always the case. Put yourself out there and do something that might seem a little bit early and uncomfortable, and only good things come out of it, because you're only going to get mostly support from people out there. I'm sure you started posting these things and it was just to dead ears in the beginning, or just into the void too. So you're amped up about improving your own drawings, but then you post them out there. Did you ever like get a sense of nobody really wants to hear this, or like early, like, I don't know, like that's the kind of stuff that happened to me. Whenever I started posting and I got no engagement at all, I said, does anybody even care about any of this stuff? Like I thought I was trying to help, but nobody's paying any attention. It was discouraging, let's just say.
Man, LinkedIn's a really weird space. I mean, I'm doing it there because, there's a professional aspect to it. Like I'd like some professional exposure to kind of show the world like who I am beyond just what you'll read on a one-page resume. So, it's a professional network, but the drawback to that is it's a lot of crickets. A lot of people that maybe will read your stuff, but they won't engage. And, to your point about sending it out there into the void, I definitely felt that way. And I just kind of had to tell myself, like, am I really doing it for the pats on the back? No, not really. Like, I'm kind of going to do it anyway. And I'm just sharing the stuff I was already going to do. And even still to this day, like, I feel like that half the time. Where it's like some things will work and some don't, but I'm not, if I was setting out there to maybe be seen as a guru or some mega influencer or to get some like brand sponsorship or something, but that's not really my goal. So in that case, I let myself off the hook a little bit, like if things fall a little flat, and I don't know. How did you get over it? Or are you still kind of...
Well,
battling that
the
a little
problem
bit.
with me is I am trying to go out there and become like have the sponsors and do all that. So I think I had the wrong mindset. If I had a better mindset around that, because I'm out there trying to rap too, and that was an entirely different. It was similar to the way you did your drawings. You know, the first thing was I want to write a rap, and I don't know what to rap about. Well, I do know accounting. That's my life, so I should rap about my life. Real, recognize real. Like that's what rappers rap about. You know, I too have also sold drugs, so I could rap about that, and I could rap about doing taxes. So I could balance all of that together into one little unique blend. But in my mind, it was bigger than it landed. Like at first, when I'm working really hard on this, and I put so much effort into it, and it's so much better than the other stuff I did, and I'm ready to put it out, I'm expecting it to go viral. I'm expecting it to explode, and I just get a few pats on the back. And so if I wasn't expecting pats on the back and I just wanted to put something out there and I got some, that would be more, I would be exceeding my own expectations. But if my expectations are, oh, this is going to blow up, and it doesn't, then I let myself down. So I'm learning how to get better at this and I'm learning to lower my expectations. Hence the OKR, okay rapper. It's not, you don't expect much. So well, I think you have the right mindset on this, and you're doing things. So going back to, your whole platform and why you're doing it, it seems like you're also giving the finger to the establishment in a lot of ways. You don't give a flux either. No flux given. I'm taking Eminem and I'm bringing it. You don't give a flux.
Let's do it. Yeah.
You're your version of Eminem. That's why I said Eminem in the beginning. You're doing all of these things, poking fun at it. You are safe. You have a job. And you can help people that may be looking for an out. So catching the ones as they fall off of this public account, as they're diving out the windows, you're catching them as they're falling and bringing them someplace safe. Mm-hmm. It sounds like that's what you were doing in the first place. You weren't doing this to be the hero. You didn't want them to even see who, you're just out there kind of guiding people in the right direction because, look, I may not have it all figured out or anything, but I seem to have set out to what I was. You had your failures or your doors closing along the way, but you set out what you accomplished to do. And now that you've reached the top of your mountain, okay, now let's help these others. You're sort of doing that. So you're a guide, you're a shepherd. You're doing these other worldly things with your life to get some more fulfillment. How does it feel when you're scrolling now? Does it feel different, or are you paying paying attention to the same things? So you said before you started doing this, you were scrolling and felt like you needed to contribute. Now that you are contributing, do you feel compelled to contribute more? What's the feeling?
I guess I feel closer to it because if you're just the viewer, it's a one-way transaction, And I read a lot
you're
anyway.
You're the product if you're the viewer, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It felt less productive if all you're doing is getting sucked into, the doom scroll. Whereas if you're part of putting some stuff out there, and a lot of it is, and to your point, like, it's not going to hurt. That as bad as it's going to hurt is that nobody looks at it and nobody likes it. But it can only really benefit you, right? So I felt like, well, then I'm kind of taking part of it, but I'm also putting something out there. Maybe something good comes from it. Like, not that I don't want the big sponsor and like something to go viral, but like that's not the main thing. So now, I mean, I don't necessarily feel maybe more compelled to do necessarily more. Like, I'm enjoying like getting to know sort of like the accounting community and what's out there, because it's a funny bunch where a lot of people aren't contributing. Or if you go on like Reddit and you go on like the accounting subreddit, man, people are ripping it apart. You don't see that as much on LinkedIn, because it's got everyone's real name on it. So it's a little friendlier there.
Yeah, LinkedIn, everybody saves the nicest part of themselves on LinkedIn. I don't see too much shade on LinkedIn. I see a lot of overwhelming support there if somebody says anything at all.
Yeah.
There's no dislike button on LinkedIn.
No. There could definitely be times where it can borderline cringe, right? That's the part that I'm like, am I part of the cringe thing, and things like that.
I know I am. I know the stuff I'm doing is cringe, but I think like in a way, and I don't know what you mean by cringe too. What do you mean by that? Like further?
When you were kind of saying like maybe the middle finger to the establishment, that's more along the way I look at it, where I don't feel cringe. If I'm calling out the Kool-Aid, or saying like, maybe a contrarian take, which is a lot of the stuff that I do. But a lot of it is not necessarily, I try to really veer away from the cringe as much as possible, but a lot of the stuff you see is, boosting your firm, or like this event and congratulations on your promotion, and like it says 100 replies. Congrats.
That's the cringe.
That to me is super cringy. Or like people like praise me, shower me with kisses. You know what I mean? Like, or I passed by a homeless man and gave him $1 and went to the interview and it was him and he hired me to be the CFO. Like all those. And the selfies and stuff, I find like all that stuff pretty cringe. Whereas like, if you want to go do a Rough Rider knockoff about accounting, man, I'm all about that. I don't look at that as cringe, but I guess everyone's got a different
and in my mind, I look at it as cringe compared to the rapper I want to be. I'm still cringe worthy of like, I'm going to look back on some of the stuff that I'm doing. Actually, I'm not, because I'm still being real at the same time. I'm still putting my middle finger to whatever it is that I'm like rallying against. And so I think everybody has to have their own system that works for them. And that's one thing that I've encouraged people and to continue putting yourself out there. Doesn't mean that people are going to cringe at you. And nobody is. In a way, nobody's really pointing at you until you become really big. You're not going to have haters, so nobody's really going to discourage you in the beginning. And everybody's got something unique to contribute wherever they come from and whatever they're doing. Putting yourself out there is only going to find more people like you and more people that are encouraged by that. And I'm sure that's what you found. The longer that you've been doing this, the more that you've done it. So, you started by doing a book, right? Or did you take all of the advice that you would give somebody and turn all those tips into like an ebook?
That's essentially how it all came together. So turn that into the book, and then a lot of the stuff that I was posting like isn't necessarily, I got to spend all this time to do it. It's a copy and paste from different sections, maybe reworded and stuff with a different illustration on it and posted. I already put in like the sweat equity to kind of do that and have just had fun with like sharing little excerpts here and there. So that's what I did. That's sort of that's how the book came together, and then started to kind of see like, it resonated with some people. Like, is there anything else that could be helpful to other people? And started looking into like other things that, to your point, like maybe are unique to me that isn't out there. Is there anything else like that I could share? So I started going down that route too, with the shift in like with AI and hybrid work being completely like disrupting the work environment. Started thinking along those lines of like, I wonder, is there something else I can put out there, like a course? So I started working on a course on using the digital whiteboard, really excelling at virtual collaboration, because I think that's one of the things that are sending a lot of remote workers back to the office, is because collaboration is kind of falling short compared to in office. So stuff like that. And those are the things I was reading anyway, all about hybrid work and sending people back to the office. And I was like, well, I'm the type of person that has an opinion about everything. So, for me, it was really just, instead of keeping it to myself, like, continue to share it. People have been receptive to some of the stuff. So I feel like, why not? Why not keep going?
So you've created your own platform to be able to give those LinkedIn created the platform. You've got that platform now to share those opinions, but you've created another skill that you can continue to harness, and that's the illustrations or doing the other fun stuff. Like, this is now a whole nother activity outside of your job that's kind of it sounds like fun, and a way for you to like talk back to the void. If you were doom scrolling and you had a lot of opinions at that stage, you were probably thinking of all the things you might have said, and now you have that outlook and outlet. You have that outlet to be able to do that, and you have a different outlook on all of those problems too, because now you're also helping contribute to the conversation. And all of these things are big ideas. The list of things that you said we can talk about today, that list goes on, but it's a few things that keep coming up. What is it about these topics, like the 150 rule? What are some of the others that keep coming up? What is it about these that people could just continue? Let's see, it's the shortage, underpaid, overworked, the image problem, all of that. What is it about these topics? I guess we can start with just your reaction to that.
I mean, I think they're long-time problems, overworked, underpaid, the image problem. They're long-term problems that, there's a whole task force. I think the AICPA has a 12-point plan, to fix all this stuff. But I think it keeps coming up and up because I think they keep falling short, in my opinion, like on the progress that's being made. Like something as simple as, hey, do we need the 150? Like I got my extra credit hours doing intro to film class at a community college. That's not helping me at all. It's a money grab. It's a higher education money grab. And I would think that the industry would say, hey, let's just drop it. We'll get more people. But they won't say that. Not across the board. Individual states are doing it. So I think the reason they keep coming up is because the progress on each of these is pretty slow. And it's glaring. I feel like it's so glaring. And honestly, I feel like it's not that hard to solve. But it seems to be challenging everyone.
All of the things, the thread in all of these is greed and money. And the people at the top are holding on to that. So then it's pointing at the problem. The real problem is the greed and the money and the people at the top that don't want to budge or move or share. Let's just say the ones that don't want to share. They have all the money, they have all the power, and they have all the systems in place that are upholding that mindset of we have to put, like, it's the pyramid scheme of business, right? Everybody's believed that they will find their way to the top if they work hard enough. And now they're all finding out, well, no, that's actually not the case. Even if we work this hard and put ourselves through this, there's only a few that are going to make it through because it's too much now. So let's start at the beginning and all of the barriers to entry. Let's start knocking those down. Let's also talk about the overwork and all of that. That's all just contributing to the larger problem at hand. The solution to that, I think you were alluding to, and what a lot of people have said, is a generation dies off. And the next generation that comes, they don't play this way. They don't like to play around like that. And everybody gets a piece of the pie with the newer generations. And we can all contribute. We can all do our own thing. And I think it becomes more of a gig type community economy. What are your thoughts on the future?
Man, I love that the youngest workers now entering the workforce have kind of forced the hand by basically voting with their feet and not taking the CPA exam, not studying accounting. It's forced the hand of everyone to say, hey, maybe we need to change some stuff. Because, these things have been going on. These drawbacks have been around for decades. And to the point that it ends up becoming this like pissing contest of who can work the most hours. And, oh, you only did 70? Well, I did 80. And it's like, that's not good, man. That's not good. Whatever was beaten into your head, like, that's not good. And then I think a lot of what happens is people burn out. And then they go to jump to industry or do something else. And they take the first job they can get because they just got to get out of there. And that's a lot of like the stuff I put in the book is like, you got to plan your exit way better than that. Because you're just going to end up in a crappy industry job. If you take the first thing that you go for. So I love the younger generation kind of saying like, hey man, that doesn't fly for me, because I think now we're having to change the way we do things. And I don't know, maybe Uprising is a little dramatic, but I like a good drama. So like, I feel like there's a little bit of an uprising now.
It's an uprising, dude. This is like, we are in the perils of it right now. Like we've been talking about the problem. It's been an existential threat for all this time. And now the chickens have come home to roost. Nobody can really hire. There's nobody going into accounting. And I think it's the AICPA that's in trouble most than any other industry, because I think accounting itself is going to be fine. There will be people to do taxes. There will be people for accounting and all that. I think all of this stuff is going to be fine. I think industry is definitely going to be fine. All of those jobs still exist. I think it's the license itself and the organizations that uphold the license that might be what we see is that doesn't make it out of this war. That's the casualty. Yeah. That's the war casualty, right? People may end up not pursuing the CPA profession out of college and all of that. And it's maybe the big four ends up changing, but they're business. They're big business. And at this point, they're too big to fail. They're not going anywhere either. I think they'll figure out their ways and they're hiring ways and all that. But I think the casualty, this is just my prediction, is the AICPA is the one that has to really rethink their idea on what membership is and who's going to join. If they don't have new membership, they don't have new CPAs, how are they going to backfill their control on the industry? What if the EA has an uprising in the tax scenario? All the people who do taxes and everybody on the public, the EA has a charge and everybody becomes an EA and the clients know what that is. I'm making a joke here because that probably won't happen. What do you think? What do you think the outcome is of this uprising, as you say, in the future of this? Because Google's not going anywhere. Google's always going to have positions in their accounting department.
Yeah. I agree with you that I think a lot of those positions are safe. I think the industry and public accounting, and that starts with AICPA and even the higher education institutions too, and instead of just feeding Kool-Aid about Big Four and that's it, like talk about going off on your own, starting your own practice, or what it could be like to start off in industry, but right now they don't want to bite the hand that feeds, and that hand that feeds is the Big Four, right? So I think yes, Big Four will be safe, but I think it will change things in that people don't want that public accounting model as it stands today. The value proposition to do 75-hour weeks to make $50K is not working. The value proposition is not there for people. And then you say, and you got to take another 30 credit hours just to sit for an exam, a 4-part exam, that you have a 50% chance of failing. Like at some point, I think, and that point is now, where they've got to find another way to attract the demand that they used to have. So I think the future is bright in that maybe it's a little reluctant change, but it's positive change anyway, that I think the firms are going to have to change to bring in new people. Because you're right, those roles aren't going away. You're going to need to find experienced people, which may mean higher education needs to change. Less people are even signing up to even go to college in general, right? Because they don't see the return on their investment. So I think things are going to change in that regard, and I think maybe people that have with already some experience today, like maybe myself or people that have already built up a little bit of into their career, I think they're going to probably capitalize pretty well. I know I'm biased, so maybe that's why I'm saying that, but like 75% of the CPAs now are retirement age. At some point, they got to go, right? And there's nobody to fill those shoes, and the people that are going to fill the shoes, maybe it's like people like you or me that are going to say, yeah, and we're going to do it different. Or the people have spoken, and I think now it's the whispers of maybe, somebody like you or me who's kind of okay to talk about it, because you don't care if you tick off some of the firms or the AICPA, and I've kind of moved on. I don't really
interest in any of that. Yeah,
I don't really care either. But there's a lot of people that got to keep it kind of tight and quiet, because they're still kind of
members of
trapped
the
into
institution.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of. I get it, and I've always been one to say, point my middle finger to the man, because you always need those in society to start questioning. You need people that are going to question the norms and what everybody considers the way or normal, because there are better ways to do things. There are different ways. I was always that person in my life. So naturally, it escalates to whatever you're paying attention to or whatever you're doing in that, and the people in your life that you can impact. Like I see this on a smaller level. Like my daughter wants to go into accounting. I'm not like knocking on wood on this either. I'm not pushing her to do anything. She's making her own decisions. She's 16. She's making her own choices. And then her friends are also interested in it too. And I'm curious.
Wow. Like,
what is this? Why are you guys even into accounting? What is it about? Nobody cares about accounting. And they're pointing at me. It's because of the stuff I'm doing. They're like, look at you. You're rapping. You're like doing really cool stuff in accounting. And that really humbled me. But it also is like, it's in my house. So it's not like I can hide from that or escape the reality that probably is the case. I'm making accounting cool for them. And that's what you're doing, or you're trying to do it, at least in the sense that you're promoting the profession as a whole. Neither of us are really specifically saying you have to go become a CPA and you should go into accounting. We're just showing that there is a way, there is a path to have some fun doing this too.
Mm-hmm. It's addressing the image problem maybe bit by bit. Like if there's enough people that do that, and that vocal majority now of doom and gloom starts to be a little more even, you know, and I think once people start to take the good with the bad, right now it's just all bad is what you would hear if you're a student looking to find out something, right? There's enough people pushing and there's the good, and I don't think either of us are trying to pull any punches either, right? But there's a different non-Kool-Aid version of the accounting industry that you can kind of hear more about.
We're not naive too, so we know how the news cycles work and how everybody's fed certain information to believe, and that's the perception. So accounting has always been perceived as boring by the media, by anybody that you associate with, anybody that I know that is an accountant. Outwardly, they are pretty boring. Like in a group setting, in most of the time, most accountants are the last people to speak up about their own thing, and they're more reserved, they're more quiet, and especially in a group setting, they don't want to look different. I've been OKR, I've been performing. I performed in front of a group of 2,000 accountants at Scaling New Heights, and nobody stood up during my performance. So this is poor me. Like, I couldn't get the crowd to stand up. But most places that I perform, people are lit up and they're excited about it and they are like into it. But most of the time, it takes a lot to get a group of accountants to really express themselves and let loose in front of a group of people. So and I have noticed that or perceived it. So I thought maybe it's just because they're accountants. At first, I thought maybe it's just me. I didn't do a good job or anything like that. Now I'm starting to change the narrative a little bit. Maybe it is that, like, us accountants, outwardly, we are pretty boring, and we have that perception because it's true. A lot of accountants don't like to bend the rules because they uphold the rules. This is how we've been taught. This is what we're most comfortable with, and this is the way. So we don't want to push up against that. So that's why our industry and our profession might be slower to change and slower to adapt in different things. That's also what we've seen too, and it's a constant discussion topic. But maybe that's why, because we want to uphold the rules and we want to keep things the way that they are and uphold the establishment. So it might be that accountants are seen as boring because of our innate need to uphold what's right and what's true, the facts, the numbers, and all that. What do you think there?
I mean, I definitely think accountants are more susceptible to be, averse to change, right? And I think probably more likely to be introverts. But the other side of that too is a lot of times it's the quietest person in the room that has the most insightful comment or the biggest insight. You just got to get it out of them. And that's what's so funny about public accounting, man. You go to an end of busy season party when everyone's open bars, stuff. People are turning up. Deep down, they've got it in there. You just got to bring it out of them. Inside of that crowd, they were all wanting to stand up, but nobody was going to do it, right? Unless somebody else did.
Over the next 3 days, that's exactly what I learned. Everybody in that crowd, or at least the people that liked it, they came up to me, and it was in droves. It was every different piece of that event, at the parties, at the vendor room, out in the halls. People came up to me and they said how much they liked it. And a lot of people even said, I wanted to stand up, but I didn't want to be the first one. I had a couple different people say that to me. But man, that's the accountants I know. The ones that I know and that I see when they do speak up at the parties, and that's always the punchline to this part of the story, is that's where they really open up. Once they can feel comfortable and their guard is down, those are the most fun. Those are the people I have the most fun with, like that I see that have the best to contribute, because we see it all. And that perception of, I don't know. I mean, we speak the language of business too, but then we can speak other languages. And there's just very few and far people that I can have a really deep conversation with that in the accounting space that I don't consider fun at the end of the conversation. Everybody has that, but everybody has it in a different way, and they shine and they show it in different ways too. Yeah. And so that's what's special about this is about like the people that are able to put themselves out there. So it's, bringing it back, and I'll reel the conversation back into how you've done that and how you've displayed your uniqueness in what you do, but you're just still the boring Mike from accounting. Like, that's a joke. How did you come up with that? Like, Mike from accounting, right? Like, they're the ones who are telling us no. Like, isn't that part of the joke too? The accounting department,
Exactly. Like I got it because some people would. I work a lot with cross-functional teams, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, Mike from accounting says we got to do this," kind of thing. So I would get that every now and then. But to your point, it's ironic because I think you say Mike from accounting, and it's like you painted me with one brush. This is what this guy is, and I feel like I got a lot more to offer than that. And maybe the profession at large isn't necessarily creative, but I consider myself to be pretty creative, and maybe the profession is going to be super introverted, and I'm definitely an introvert myself too, but I have no problem being extroverted on occasion too. So I think, like you were saying, people just need that permission to open up a little bit, and accounting profession at large is just so guarded. So like it's kind of a little play on irony there of like, oh, Mike from accounting, but he's doing a lot of stuff that maybe you wouldn't think of as Mike from accounting. And I feel like you have a very similar creative outlets. Like, this is not what you would anticipate somebody in the accounting field doing, is getting up on stage and rapping. Like, and I think going to that far extreme sometimes is like saying, look, I know we're saying there's no creativity and there's no humor in the accounting profession, but look, there's some people that are like breaking that glass ceiling wide open. And I don't know, maybe it becomes contagious. You know, if enough people start to do it, then it becomes less of a stuffy environment, and then more people open up. Because you're right, I think the people in accounting, like I always said, even in the big four firms that are in public accounting, the good part are the people you're working with. They're cool people. It's just you got to get them out of their shell a little bit. But when you do, like, man, they really shine. And it seems like same experience you've had.
Yeah. You got to get people to laugh a little bit, laugh at themselves a little bit too, because most people will laugh at themselves. You just need somebody to ignite that, because we are all, from accounting, at least, the ones listening, our students, and you, me, we are that Mike. We are all Mike from accounting. Everybody has seen us as boring on the outside too. So to let it out, once we're in, we're already at this watering hole. We're already sharing the same shared experience of everybody talking about the crisis in the profession and everything, like people talking about what bubbles we're in and all that. If we could at least have some fun inside of this, the Titanic might be sinking, but at least we could play some music and enjoy it, right?
Exactly, man. Exactly. And I think things are turning, right? Because the old guard of accounting is kind of becoming less relevant, I think. And I think people are opening up to the, hey, accounting is moving into the advisor space. Soft skills are more important. It's not just I want the quiet guy that heads down in a book in the back room. Like, that's not what accountants are today. And I think that shift is only going to be good, I think, for the future. And once people start to see that, remote work is very heavily favored in the accounting profession compared to some of the others. That's going to attract a lot of people to the field. And I think only good things are going to come. But it's also just, I talk about it a lot too, because, we're saying only a select few are willing to step out and say, like, I can break that stereotype out in the town square for everyone to see. I'll stand up and applaud for the OKR rapper, right? But those that do, whether they realize it or not, man, that's the easiest competitive advantage you have, because everyone else is not going to do it. And people are all looking for this competitive advantage. Just do something that breaks those stereotypes. And all of a sudden, you're one of the people in the profession that are rise to the top kind of the stack of resumes, maybe, or you separate yourself. Yeah.
That's your message too. That's how to land your dream job, whatever your dream job might be. My dream job is to be a rapper, just a rapper, not the okay rapper. I just want to be the rapper. I never really set anything else out as far as my goals, even when I was in college. Like, I always wanted to be an accountant too, which was kind of weird. I wanted to be an entertainer and accountant, and that's a unique blend. So it's just so happens that that's kind of what I'm doing now, but that wasn't the case. It's always what's your dream job. You always seemed like accounting was the thing, but you wanted something in tech, and look at what it turned into. You're Mike from accounting. You're Mike from accounting at Google, who's also on LinkedIn, sharing with everybody ways that you could find your purpose or your dream job within that profession that you chose, or that chose you. Some people feel like accounting chose them. It came easy to them, or it was just one of those, like, the puzzles fitting together. That's what they say about a lot of things, that it chooses you. That path was already like the path that you were on. You're going to end up there in some way or another. Doors closed, doors open, you end up to where you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for those of us that are already in accounting, we know it is fun, and it can be a lot more fun if more of us share our stories and put ourselves out there. You're going to get nothing but a warm reception from those that have already been doing it, you know, especially the ones that have been doing it, because we know what you're going through and, you know, how hard it is to just take that first step to whatever it is that you want to start doing. I've had people on the show that they dance. The dancing accountant. I got the singing CPA coming up. Yeah.
Nice.
All kinds of different things. Like, people are doing cool stuff within accounting, and they're blending it with the things that they love. You just got to find that place that's appropriate too. You know, I think everybody creates their own little corner of these internet circles. We're all already in accounting, for those that are. And I was going to get to the next part. The people that aren't in accounting, you know, you've already listened to this much of this episode or anything. Like, why not at this point?
Yeah.
Like, take a few accounting classes, change your major or whatever it might be. What kind of a closing message do you got, Mike, that you share with a lot of your students? Because you're a teacher too. So what are some of the things that you share with your students?
I mean, you know, I think we touched on it a little bit, but push yourself to come up with your own dream, not the dream that somebody implanted in your head of you're going to make partner, you know, and that's all there is. You could want to go do your own practice, do some things like you're doing, or come up with your own dream. I think that's a big part of like what owning your career is all about, but then actually go for it. I think trying is a little underrated these days, where I think people get scared by the likelihood of success. You know, we all know you gotta fail to succeed, but my favorite quote from Dumb and Dumber is that 99% chance of failure, and he says, so you're telling me there's a chance? And to kind of keep it on this ridiculous note, but like, don't be afraid of that, right? Somebody's got to be part of that 1%. And if you add up all these little edges you can get all along the way, maybe that turns into some sizable competitive advantage for you, and you can have everything that you want. So don't write it off, not to use an accounting pun, but don't write that dream job off. Like, they're out there, just make sure you have it. And we're very strategic thinkers. So don't get burned out and then jump ship and then complain that the grass isn't greener. Like, know what you want. Do it the right way. Be careful of drinking too much Kool-Aid, right? Know if it's Kool-Aid that you're drinking, and formulate your own opinion and listen to some other points of view, and not just the ones that are being sort of force-fed to you in the media or from your professor or your firm. So I think that's probably something that's rung true for me, and I think for you as well, Scotty. So the other thing, too, before we close out, man, you got to, if you ever do another track, I'd love to spit some bars, man. You got to reach out. I would love to do something.
We can definitely talk more about that. Let's talk about doing another. I can build features into my raps all day. This is perfect. I've been doing raps with my kids. I need some other CPAs. Nice. I got Eminem on the line here that wants to do a rap with me. This is Eminem from Chicago. Sorry, you're the Chicago version. Technically the Baltimore version, but dope. Yes. Yes. Man. I'll close
Those
this out.
Those are too fun. I gotta be a part of that at some point. So keep me in mind.
Well, hey, students, you heard it here first. We got a collab album coming out, coming down the line. Close us off. Class dismissed, homies. Peace out.